Today we will be discussing the peripheral lesions which predispose to the development of retinal detachment. Specific learning outcomes. By the end of this presentation, the audience will be able to classify retinal detachment, describe lesions predisposing to it, describe posterior vitreous detachment, and discuss types of retinal tears and their management. So the retinal detachment, it is classified basically into two types, rheumatogenic and non-rheumatogenic detachment. Whenever there is a break which is leading to the detachment, it is classified into rheumatogenic, and the other causes they are classified under non-rheumatogenic, which include exudative retinal detachment and tractional retinal detachment. We also see combined tractional and rheumatogenic detachment in which both the elements are present, traction as well as a break. And subclinical retinal detachment is an asymptomatic retinal detachment which has a subretinal fluid greater than 1 disc diameter, but it does not extend more than 2 disc diameter towards the posterior fluid. Moving to the peripheral lesions which predispose to it, we have lattice degeneration, snail tract degeneration, and cystic retinal tufts, zonular retinal tractions, and these are also associated with the development of tears as well as atrophic holes. Starting with the most common one, which is lattice degeneration, it is present in about 8% of the population and is seen in 40% of patients with retinal detachment. Patients with lattice degeneration usually fall between the age group of 2nd to 3rd decade, and it is common in moderate myopes. This is important. Patients having myopia ranging from 3 diopter to 6 diopter, they are more susceptible to have lattice degeneration than high myopes. But the lifetime risk of retinal detachment in an individual with lattice is approximately 1% only. So this is not a very high risk thing. We just have to be careful when a patient has lattice degeneration and keep close observation. Basically, the pathophysiology is exact pathophysiology is unknown, but is thought to be retinal thinning and degeneration, which is occurring, and lattice is characterized by a triad of retinal thinning, overlying vitreous liquefaction, and marginal vitreoretinal adhesions on the basically posterior margin of the lattice. And it is most common bilateral and present supratemporally at the equatorial region of the retina. Spindle-shaped areas of retinal thinning are seen, which are located between the equator and the posterior border of the vitreous space. And overlying sclerosed vessels form an arborizing network of white lines, which is characteristic of the lattice degeneration. Some lesions they may be associated with snowflake, which are basically remnants of the degenerative molar cells, and associated hyperplasia of the RPE can result in hyperpigmentation. Small holes are also common with lattice. The management, basically counseling of the patient regarding the symptoms of retinal detachment is important. If the patient experiences sudden onset of flashes or sudden decrease in vision or a curtain-like visual defect, then the patient is counseled to report immediately to the doctor. If the patient is asymptomatic, then no treatment is necessary and is just kept on observation of 6 months to an annual observation. However, even if there is an associated U tear, even if the patient is asymptomatic, we have to manage that as it increases the chance of retinal detachment to 30 to 40%. Then we move on to snail tract degeneration. It is basically characterized by sharply demarcated bands of tightly packed snowflakes that give the peripheral retina a white frost-like appearance. Vitreous traction with snail tract degeneration is rare, and the small atrophic holes are more common than the U-shaped tears. Therefore, snail tract degeneration is almost kept under observation, and there is no necessary for prophylactic treatment with snail tract degeneration. Cystic retinal tuft is a congenital abnormality which consists of a small round or oval, discrete, elevated whitish lesion, and it is associated with pigmentation at its base and is most commonly present temporally. Tears have been seen to be associated with cystic retinal tufts, so similarly they are kept under observation, and in case of a tear, even if the patient is asymptomatic, we give the prophylactic treatment to prevent the development of retinal detachment. Degenerative retinoschisis, it is an important differential of retinal detachment. It is more common in that is different. Usually all the less degenerative lesions, we say that they're more common in myopes. Retinoschisis develops from microcystoid degeneration, and then these cavities, they coalesce and result in separation or splitting of the neurosensory retina. And retinoschisis, it has two types. It can be typical or degenerative, or reticular retinoschisis. In typical retinoschisis, the splitting occurs in outer plexiform layer. However, in reticular retinoschisis, the splitting occurs at the level of nerve fiber layer. And with reticular retinoschisis, there is greater chance of posterior involvement, and that is and a greater risk of complications as well. The patients with retinoschisis are usually asymptomatic. They don't have complaint of photopsia or floaters, because there is no element of vitreoretinal traction in it. And similarly, visual field effects are very rarely noted. Early retinoschisis, it usually involves the infratemporal quadrant of the retina, and it is common bilaterally. And it can give a dome-shaped appearance, and in order to differentiate it from retinal detachment, OCT is a very useful tool in which characteristic splitting of the layers is seen with bridging cystic spaces in between the layers in retinoschisis. We will see a quick comparison of retinoschisis versus retinal detachment. Schisis is usually bilateral, whereas detachment is usually unilateral. The surface contour in schisis is smooth as compared to corrugated in detachment. Schisis is less mobile, and the vitreous cells, they are usually absent. Demarcation lines are also absent, and the underlying RPE degeneration is usually minimal in schisis as compared to retinal detachment. The visual field effects of the scotomas are absolute in retinoschisis, and they are relative in retinal detachment. Schisis is more common in hyperopes, whereas detachment is more common in myopes. And the retinal breaks in schisis, they are differentiated into outer breaks or inner breaks, whereas in detachment, full thickness breaks are present, resulting in accumulation of the subretinal fluid. Retinal detachment with schisis is rare. But the detachment, it is almost always asymptomatic and infrequently progressive and rarely requires surgery. Posterior extension to involve the fovea is very rare, but as told earlier, it is seen in cases of reticular retinoschisis, and vitreous hemorrhage is also rare. So the follow-up for patients with schisis in the same way with all degeneration, counseling about the symptoms of retinal detachment is very important. If there is a small peripheral schisis, then there is no need of review, or annual review can be done. However, if there is a large retinoschisis, it is observed periodically, and its spread towards the posterior pole is also documented with the help of photographs and visual field testing. If the breaks are present in both layers, that also is a factor that you have to monitor the patient regularly for the development of detachment. So if the breaks are extensive or it is extending posteriorly, then we manage the retinoschisis, and that is done usually with the help of pneumatic retinopexy, or the surgical repair may be indicated if it is progressing relentlessly towards the posterior pole. If recurrent vitreous hemorrhage is occurring, although it's rare, but if it's occurring, then we will proceed towards pars plana vitrectomy, and the progressive symptoms of retinal detachment would be addressed accordingly. Then we move to zonular tractional cuff. It occurs in about 15% of the patients, and it is a phenomena which is caused by aberrant zonular fibers which extend posteriorly to be attached on the retina. And this will exert a traction, and this can also predispose to the development of retinal detachment. They are typically located nasally, and the risk of developing retinal tear is around 2%. So periodic long-term review is generally recommended, and asymptomatic patients similarly are not treated. Then we have white with pressure. Basically, white with pressure refers to area of retinal whitening. A white grey appearance of the retina is seen when pressure is applied, usually with the help of scleral indentation. It may be seen on the posterior border of lattice degeneration or snail tract degeneration, and it is also frequently seen in normal eyes, and there is less chance of development of predisposition to retinal detachment, and the patients are usually kept on close follow-up. Then white without pressure, it is the same appearance as white with pressure. However, this is present without the application of pressure or scalene indentation, and it corresponds to an area of strong adhesion of the vitreous. However, this is associated with giant retinal tears. So patients with white without pressure, they are kept on close follow-up of about 3 to 6 months. So because with the tears, the incidence of development of retinal detachment increases, so the patients are kept on close follow-up. And a prophylactic therapy in white without pressure can be considered. And lastly, we have myopic choroidal atrophy, which is characterized by diffuse or circumscribed choroidal depigmentation. And it is commonly associated with thinning of the overlying retina and typically occurs on the posterior pole. Retinal holes, atrophic retinal holes may develop with myopic choroidal atrophy, but as they have very low predisposition for development of retinal detachment, the patient is kept on close observation. Then moving on to the posterior vitreous detachment. Basically, the attachments of the vitreous are very important. The physiological attachment to the vitreous is very strongly evident at the vitreous base, and then the optic disc margins, then the perifoveal region, and the peripheral blood vessels. So the vitreous detachment, it will begin from the from the blood vessels, the perifoveal region, and at the end it will detach from the optic disc, and it is almost never detached from the vitreous base. Pathological attachments, the vitreous can attach to all of the degenerations which have been described before, and that can result in tractions and ultimately predispose the patient to the development of retinal detachment. Posterior vitreous detachment refers to the separation of the cortical vitreous along with the delineating posterior hyaloid membrane from the neurosensory retina posterior to the vitreous base. So basically, first of all, vitreous synthesis, which is liquefaction of the thick cortical vitreous, is occurring, and that leads to the condensation, which exerts a traction onto the neurosensory retina, and there is dehiscence in the cortical gel, which results in accumulation of the fluid along the subretinal space. Posterior vitreous detachment, it can occur spontaneously, or it can be induced by events such as trauma or cataract surgery. Uveitis can also induce it, and it can also be induced after panretinal photocoagulation. As explained before, firstly, if the perifoveal hyaloid detachment will occur, then the foveal separation, then detachment from the posterior retina as far as the equator, and attachment, it is initially retained at the optic disc. However, when it is detached from there as well, the vitreous is completely detached up to the vitreous base. The patient presents with symptoms of flashes, floaters, or even blurred vision. Detailed slit lamp examination is necessary, and the detached posterior hyaloid membrane is often seen as a crumpled translucent membrane in the mid-vitreous cavity, behind which it is optically clear.
इसको बैक करें, इसका नाम क्या है? Weissen's.
Hemorrhage may be indicated by the presence of red blood cells in the anterior vitreous, which are usually smaller than the pigment cells we see, and it can form a crescent shape which borders the limit of the posterior hyaloid membrane.
इसका साइन का नाम क्या है? Cells in the anterior vitreous in the presence of UVB. What is Schaffer sign?
Sir, वो तो pigment होता है in the anterior vitreous, break to anterior part. And if vitreous hemorrhage it is present, it should prompt careful search for a retinal break, which is present in about 40 to 90% of the patients, and the break, they tend to be posterior in such cases in which vitreous hemorrhage has been associated. The signs, pigment granules in the anterior vitreous on slit lamp examination, which is also known as Schaffer sign or tobacco dusting, and the presence of Schaffer sign raises the possibility of retinal break to about 95%. And vitreous cells, if they are numerous, they also signify the presence of a break, and careful evaluation of the detailed fundus evaluation should be done, and a break should be identified. Posterior vitreous detachment can be appreciated on B-scan as well as OCT as a thin membrane which is detached from the retina, and it will disappear on looking on B-scan. History is very important. The onset of symptoms should be asked. If acute, then the patient is examined in 24 to 48 hours. Risk factors such as myopia or past or family history of retinal detachment is taken. Diabetes should be ruled out as another cause of vitreous hemorrhage. And if the patient experiences a single small floater and there is no photopsia, then there is no need for urgent assessment. However, if the patient is symptomatic, then as discussed before, the risk of retinal break increases and the patient is kept on close follow-up. Visual acuity of the patient is documented. Pupillary reactions are seen to determine the involvement of the retina. The anterior vitreous is assessed for the presence of cells, blood or pigment, and dilated fundus examination, preferably with indirect ophthalmoscopy scanning the periphery, is also recommended. If about 10 or more cells are present in a 1 millimeter slit, then the incidence of a retinal break in a fellow eye has been reported to be over 30%. So when to review? If there are no suspicious findings, routine review may not be necessary. But if there is presence of risk factors such as myopia or retinal detachment in the other eye or family history, then the patient is reviewed after an interval of 1 to 6 weeks and then 6 to 12 months periodically. And a patient who present with multiple prominent floaters or hazy vision should be reviewed frequently, as this has been seen to be associated with a higher risk of retinal break. Management assurance that the floaters will become less noticeable with time in the patients who have done the examination and no risk factors have been seen. We reattend in the case of development of new symptoms of the patient. If there is an hemorrhage which is obscuring the frontal view, then the follow-up is done at about 1 to 6 weeks, in which periodic B scans are done in order to exclude the development of retinal detachment or involvement of the retina. And a low threshold for PPV should be opted when risk factors such as retinal detachment in the fellow eye are also present. Then lastly, we will be discussing the retinal breaks. Retinal breaks, they develop in most cases as a result of traction at the site of vitreoretinal adhesions, and they occur in about 1 in 5 eyes with symptomatic PVD. So we should not ignore a patient who is symptomatic with PVD by just counseling him. We should always scan for the presence of retinal breaks. In the presence of the break, the retrohyaloid fluid, it gets access to the subretinal space and ultimately results in elevation of the neurosensory retina. And asymptomatic retinal breaks are seen in about 8% of the general population. The timing, the breaks, they are usually present as soon or after the onset of symptoms of the posterior vitreous detachment. However, in a few, about 5% of the patient, the tear formation may be delayed up to several weeks. The tears associated with posterior vitreous detachment they are usually located in the upper retina and more common temporally than nasally. And macular breaks related to PVD are rare, but when they occur, they are usually round and are seen in myopic eyes. Based on the morphology, we classify the breaks. First of all, we have the horseshoe or the U-shaped tears, which consists of a flap whose apex has been pulled anteriorly by the vitreous and the base remains attached to the retina. Operculated tears, in which the flap is completely torn away from the retina by the detached vitreous gels. Now, as it has been completely torn away, there is no traction, so they are relatively less serious than the horseshoe tears, as the tractional element has been eliminated and there is less chance that it will progress further into the detachment. Retinal holes, they are round or oval, and usually they are smaller than tears and carry a lower risk than of retinal detachment, as discussed previously. And the round holes, they have also been seen in association with lattice as well as snail track degeneration. Retinal dialysis is a circumferential tear along the ora serrata and is usually a consequence of blunt ocular trauma. And basically the vitreous gel, it remains attached to the posterior margin and it typically appears as a large, very peripheral break and with a regular rolled edge. And the retinal detachment is often slowly progressive in the absence of a posterior vitreous detachment. And whenever there is a traumatic break, we always have to treat it, whether it is symptomatic or asymptomatic. Giant retinal tears is basically a variant of U-shaped tears, and it involves greater than 90 degrees of the retinal circumference or more than 3 clock hours. In contrast to dialysis, the vitreous gel, it remains attached to the anterior surface. In dialysis, it was attaching to the posterior surface. In giant retinal tear, it attaches to the anterior margin of the brain. The management, basically recent trend has been seen of less aggressive treatment with patient education and observation. The patient is counseled regarding the symptoms of retinal detachment and is asked to re-attend even if he experiences flashes or decrease in visual acuity or any other symptom. Severe complications are rare. Risk factors for progression are history of retinal detachment in the fellow eye, prior cataract surgery, particularly if vitreous losses occurred, myopia, family history of retinal detachment, and systemic conditions such as Marfan syndrome, Stickler, and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And treatment prior to any intraocular procedure is to do a detailed fundus examination and see the periphery, and if there is any predisposing condition, first treat it and then proceed towards the intraocular procedure. High risk lesions are any symptomatic breaks which are associated with an acute posterior vitreous detachment. Larger breaks carry a greater risk of progression. Persistent vitreoretinal traction, they are also a high risk for development retinal detachment, and round holes, they carry a lower risk. U-shaped tears have a greater risk, and the superior breaks, they have a greater risk of progression of retinal detachment due to the gravitational effect as well. Equatorial breaks are more likely to progress than oral breaks, and pigmentation around a break, it indicates chronicity and a degree of stability. So in summarizing, the high risk lesions will be symptomatic, large U-shaped tears which are equatorial, superior lesions, and persistent retinal traction is present. When to treat? Acutely asymptomatic U tears, up to 90% of these will lead to retinal detachment. Symptomatic U-shaped tears. So, and treatment reduces this risk to about 5%. So, the treatment for symptomatic U-shaped tears should always be performed urgently. Operculated tears, they are, as discussed before, they have a lower risk. So, basically, we can review the patient at an interval of 2 to 4 weeks, then 1 to 3 months, and then 6 to 12 months to annual follow-up. And if there is a presence of intact bridging vessels overlying the break, it indicates the ongoing vitreoretinal traction, and then we'll treat the patient properly. Asymptomatic, any tear which is asymptomatic can be observed when the vitreoretinal traction is not seen. We'll just move to the summary. Basically, the prophylactic treatment for any symptomatic tear is to treat promptly. However, for an acute symptomatic operculated hole, we can consider treatment with the reason already discussed. All the asymptomatic breaks or tears, they are often observed and kept under close follow-up. And eyes with degenerations which have been discussed in the start, there are no consensus guidelines, but consider treatment if the risk factors are present in the patient. The treatment is basically laser retinopexy and cryoretinopexy. Laser is more precise, causes less collateral damage, and there is a lower risk of development epiretinal membrane. Cryo is preferred for multiple contiguous tears or extensive lesions, or in eyes in which there is hazy media or small pupils. Otherwise, laser is the treatment of choice. The setting is a duration of 0.1 second and a spot size of 200 to 300 microns. And power of 200 milliwatt, and the target is moderate blanching, and 2 to 3 layers of confluent burns are applied around the lesion or the break. For cryo, local or regional anesthesia is given, and the tip is kept in place till thawing occurs, and a single row of application is given around the lesion. Treatment temperature is about -85 degrees. And post-treatment care is to avoid strenuous exercises for 1 week and review after 1 to 2 weeks.
Excellent presentation.
डॉक्टर साहब से आपसे कहता हूँ कि आप इसको अगर ट्रीट करके बताएं तो बहुत अच्छा कि एक आपके पास यहाँ बनाया डायग्राम सुना कि पेशेंट को कोई 1 to 3 o'clock से लेटिस के पैच पड़ा हुआ है और फिर एट्रोफिक ब्रेक्स हैं, उसको लेजर का फैसला कर लिए तो कैसे करें? कहाँ है?
सर ये मतलब अगर लैटिस है तो थोड़ा एक
एक तो ऑप्टिक्स से दो पैसे ऊपर टूट गई, एक भी नहीं चाहिए,
जी
एक ना लेजर
सर।
हाँ
सर अगर हम लेज़र कर रहे हैं इस लीजन की तो उसी तरह हमें लेयर्स में 2 to 3 कॉन्फ्लुएंट बर्न्स लगाने हैं अराउंड द लीजन जो 360 पे इन अ पेशेंट हु हैज
और अगर यू शेप टीयर के अंदर यहाँ पे यू शेप बना दें तो इसी जगह यू शेप टीयर है, उसके अंदर आपका एंटीरियर मार्जिन में नहीं लग रही है तो क्या करें? बात का पेरिफेरी बहुत पेरिफेरी पे है तो आपसे वो नहीं फोकस हो पा रहा प्रैक्टिकली, तो क्या करें?
सर अगर उस पर नहीं भी लगे तो सराउंडिंग रीजन को
साउंड तो अपने नहीं ना कर सकते, अभी तो एंटीरियर साइड में
इंटीरियर पे अगर
कोई और मोडेलिटी है लेजर के अलावा?
सर क्रायो है
वहाँ पे क्रायो करनी पड़ेगी, अगर आपसे नहीं लग रही तो आप उससे क्रायो करें, क्योंकि सबसे ज़्यादा अट्रैक्शन वहाँ पे है, यू का
हाँ जी
टीयर
इंटीरियर
वहीं पे है, वो जो उसकी अच्छा और उसका
अच्छा ये आपका बता देते हैं कि हम 360 डिग्री समझते हैं, आप कहते हैं 360 डिग्री राउंड हो रहा है, अगर इंटीरियर नहीं हमसे अप्रोच हो रहा है तब सही नहीं है, तब 360 डिग्री अराउंड द आई बॉल से बेटर होता है, उसमें
अरे
करने
जो
के
360 डिग्री जो आप लोग हम लगाते हैं ना विराल 360 डिग्री, वो सिर्फ एक प्रोग्रेशन और रेटिनल अटैचमेंट को रोकेगा, रेटिनल टीयर को ट्रीट नहीं करेगा, टीयर अपनी जगह पे काम करी जाएगा और यही वजह है कि बाद में आपको जिंदगी में देखा होगा पूरा का पूरा रेटिनल अटैच हो जाता है उसके बाद।
सर लेजर में 360 डिग्री क्रॉस हो गया है तो क्या वो सब रेटिनल फ्लूइड को इंटीरियर से अंदर आने देगा?
लेकिन वो टीयर तो ऊपर ही है,
ठीक है और मैंने जैसे हम पहले वक्तों में मेरी बातों की बात है एक्सटर्नल अप्रोच से पार्टी करते थे, बैंड लगा देते थे, सब रेटिनल कर देते थे, इंटीरियर टू द बैंड तो फ्लूइड पड़ा भी रहता था बास का और अटैच भी रहता था, रहने देते थे, इसलिए पीपी के अंदर विटनेस में जा ही नहीं रहता था ना, काट सकते ही नहीं थे।
बैंड में तो इंटीरियर को रिप्लेस हो ही नहीं सकता, बैंड से क्या करते हैं?
बैंड से पिछली बॉल एक वैरी बना के पिछली बॉल
बैंड से एक ओरा क्रिएट कर देते हैं ना, ये एक ये छोड़ दो, ये बैंड चल रहा है यहाँ पे या बैंड है उस बैंड के कनेक्शन सपोर्ट कर दी, तो यहाँ पे आपने एक इसने क्या किया, इसने एक ओरा क्रिएट कर दिया, एक सेकंड ओरा बना चाहिए, ओरा तो बड़ा मजबूत होता है, वहाँ तो फ्लूइड का चांस ही नहीं है, लिहाजा ये
इंटीरियर तो और बात
बहुत ही ज़बरदस्त काम है, अगर हम इसको यहाँ पे बाहर से सपोर्ट दे दें और उसको बड़ी अच्छी जगह सपोर्ट दे दें, फिर वो लोहे वाला काम हो जाता है, वो कभी भी डिटैच नहीं कर सकता, क्योंकि उससे आपने क्या किया
उस ओरा से कुछ स्टील मेरा करेंगे
उस सेकंड ओरा एक सेकंड ओरा क्रिएट हो गया, नंबर 1, नंबर 2 आपने विट्रियस को रिलैक्स कर दिया, जिस विट्रियस से उसको ट्रैक्शन दे रहा था, जो ये यहाँ पे यू शेप ये ऊपर या इस जगह पे विट्रियस जुड़ा हुआ है और उसका ट्रैक्शन दे रहा था, आपने उसको रिलैक्स कर दिया, लिहाजा वो बेसिक पैथोफिजियोलॉजी और रेटिनल टैच खत्म हो गई, अब आपका रेटिना जो है वो बिल्कुल ठीक रहेगा, उसको कोई मसला नहीं होगा, इन्फॉर्मेशन सेटल डाउन हो जाएगी, बात खत्म। दूसरी बात ये इसने कहा कि शेफर साइन या पिगमेंट डिस्पर्शन जो आती है उसमें 95% चांस है मुझे ब्रेक है, ये इसलिए है कि रेटिना विट्रियस के अंदर सेल्स कहीं से नहीं आ सकते, विट्रियस के अंदर सेल्स जो है वो ये जो पिगमेंट सेल्स हैं खासतौर पे ये आएंगे तो कोई ब्रेक होगा तो कोई सेल आएंगे, वरना कोई और रास्ता नहीं है सेल आने का, वाइट सेल्स आ सकते हैं वो सिली बॉडी से आएंगे, लेकिन ये जो सेल्स हैं रेटिना वाली साइड से वो पिगमेंट सेल्स हैं, पिगमेंट सेल वहाँ पड़ा हुआ है, इसमें अब क्या पूछो आप ये पूछना चाहते हैं कि यहाँ कोई फ्लूइड पड़ा हुआ है और यहाँ लेजर कर दी,
हाँ जी
अच्छी बात तो नहीं है,
ठीक है
अच्छे सर्जन की निशानी नहीं है, अच्छी सर्जरी की निशानी की सॉरी, लेकिन इसमें ट्रैक्शन तो नहीं है, ट्रैक्शन तो इंटीरियर साइड पे थी, टीयर यहाँ था, यहाँ फ्लूइड रह भी गया,
बहुत सारे जो है ना टीयर ना अप्रोच ही नहीं कर पाते, रेटिना वाले करते
जैसे मैंने क्वेश्चन पूछा, ये बड़ा कॉमन मसला है, हमारे साथ भी मसला है कि आपने उस टीयर को ट्रीट करना है, लेकिन फिर टीयर की इंटीरियर साइड को लोग छोड़ जाते हैं, अल्टीमेटली रेटिना कुछ सबसे बच गया
और
ज़्यादा
जिसके इंटीरियर को अप्रोच नहीं कर रहे जिसको भी कराया
उससे कराया
उसका जो है मतलब थोड़ा सा और ऊपर जाके जहाँ तक हमें अप्रोच आ रही है नहीं और बाकी ऐसे ट्रायल बना दें तो वो कवर नहीं करेगा।
यानी कि आप कह रहे हैं कि ये एक यू शेप टियर है और आप ऐसे कर
ऐसे इधर बाकी को वापस ले आए।
अगर आप यहाँ तक पहुँच जाते हैं, ये फर्ज करें ओरा से रेखा है
जी।
तो फिर यहाँ पहुँचते क्या मसला है?
नहीं, इस जगह से पास कर वो
इसका मतलब अगर आप यहाँ नहीं पहुँचते तो ये सारी आरडी है।
हाँ जी, हाँ जी। तो अगर ये नीचे बैरियर बन गया है तो इस आरटी के नीचे एक्सटेंड होने
नहीं,
देगा।
अगर इस तरह का बैरियर ओरा तक बना देंगे फिर तो ठीक है, लेकिन मैं वही पूछ रहा हूँ कि अगर यहाँ ओरा पर पहुँच गए हैं तो यहाँ पे क्या मसला है? इसका मतलब आप सिर्फ टीयर नहीं है, वो डिटैच है। डिटैचमेंट को डिटैचमेंट में तो ट्रीट करें और उसे या तो
अगर
स्पान लगाएं।
अगर हम इसको 360 डिग्री घुमा के ले आए फिर
360 वो फिर जब आपने विट्रियस को छोड़ा हुआ है, विट्रियस को नहीं डील किया है, हमारे पास इस तरह के ब्रेक्स को ट्रीट करने के क्या क्या तरीके हैं? वन इज कि हम इसको विराज करें, ठीक है। सेकेंड इज कि हम इसकी विटेक्टमी करें। थर्ड इज कि बाहर बैंड आ रहा है। और फोर्थ ये है कि हम इसमें न्यूमेटिक कर दें, न्यूमेटिक को इसको ड्राई कर देंगे और ड्राई करने के दौरान यहाँ पे इस जगह पे ट्राई करते हैं। तो जो चीज़ अब आप बता रहे हो ना कि ये हमें ऐसे करनी पड़ी है, इसका मतलब है फोकल डिटैचमेंट रेटिना की हुई हुई है। इसके अंदर ट्रीटमेंट होनी चाहिए न्यूमेटिक रेटिना से। आप एक 0.3 ml ऑफ गैस डालें और उसी टाइम ट्राई कर दें, मसला हमेशा के लिए याद रखें।
So what I have collected from your discussion is that creating a large laser sort of constructs a barrier between LD and the detached retina. But it is preferred to have a remedy of the underlying factors like pull of the vitreous and the retina. So you have to address the tear as well as the vitreous pull. So that's why to eradicate the vitreous pull, he is recommending pneumatic advocacy or vitrectomy
या फोकल स्पान बना दें।
so that there is no chance of progression even after creating the barrier. So only barrier may not be sufficient in a
पेशेंट को
patient.
कुछ 6 months के ट्रीटमेंट करें, हमें लाइफ के ट्रीट करें।
So we have to address all the factors which are responsible for the progression of the RD. So,
तो जो आप कह रहे हैं 360 डिग्री लेजर बार बार हम करते हैं, मैं भी करता हूँ, लेकिन 360 डिग्री लेजर की अब मेरे हिसाब से सिर्फ इंडिकेशन वही है जब मैंने कोई इंट्राऑपरेटिव प्रोसीजर करा। नंबर 2, जब बहुत ज़्यादा मायोपिक डिजनरेशन है और कोई ख़ास पैथोलॉजी समझ नहीं आ रही, जनरलाइज डिजेनरेटिव थिनिंग हुई हुई है, बट देयर इज नो डेफिनेटली वहाँ पे विट्रियस की अटैचमेंट आपको स्ट्रॉन्ग लग रही है, लेकिन कोई लेटिस नहीं है। लेटिस मैंने कल भी कहा था कि परसों कि लेटिस इज बेसिकली ए डिजीज ऑफ लो मायोपिया, लो टू मॉडरेट मायोपिया। हाई मायोपिया की तो पैथोलॉजी ही रहता है, हाई मायोपिया इज अनदर डिजीज। वो उसको हम लेटिस के, मेरा ख्याल उसके अंदर लेटिस का इंसिडेंस शायद कोई 1-2% ज़्यादा हो उससे, लेकिन वो एक अलग ही एंटिटी है, उसमें लेटिस एसोसिएट हो सकती है।
ये बात आपने कल मैंने पढ़ा भी थी और अपने तजर्बे से पिछले कई साल में यही देखा है कि 11-12 साल मायोपिया होता है उसमें पेरिफेरी बल्कि ज़्यादा हेल्दी होती है।
पेरिफेरी हेल्दी होती है, सेंटर एरिया उसमें मुझे सेंटर में पड़ा है, सेंटर वाला। तो इसलिए 360 लेजर यस इंडिकेटेड है, लेकिन इसको वैश्याना तरीके से हर पेशेंट में लगाना लगता है। ट्रीट पैथोलॉजी नॉर्मल रेटिना के अंदर रेटिनल डिटैचमेंट हो सकती है ना, मतलब एक तो है कि प्रीडिस्पोजिंग फैक्टर्स के साथ रेटिनल डिटैचमेंट, प्रीडिस्पोजिंग फैक्टर्स के बगैर भी रेटिनल डिटैचमेंट हो सकती है। कौन कौन से केसेस? उन्हें 2 काजेज आपने एग्जामिनर में पूछना है, अब उनका 2 काजेज आपने फॉर्म बता दिया। नॉर्मल रेटिना में रेटिनल डिटैचमेंट कैसे हो सकती है? अभी
can trauma lead to retinal detachment?
सर आप तो
शायद इस तरह की
ट्रामा इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कहा, लेकिन ट्रामा से बढ़ के एक काज और है, बताइए क्या हो गया? पीवीडी, यस, पीवीडी तो नॉर्मल रेटिना में रेटिनल डिटैचमेंट करती है। PVD can cause retinal detachment with predisposing factors, but PVD can cause retinal detachment without any predisposing factors. आप उसको 2 दिन पहले देखें तो उस मरीज की आंख में कुछ भी नहीं मिल रहा होता, लेकिन आज 2 दिन बाद उसको रेटिनल detachment। ठीक है, आप कह सकते हैं कि there might be some strong adhesions एट दैट पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट, आई एग्री ऑन दिस पॉइंट, लेकिन उसमें वो रीजन्स आप क्लिनिकली पिक नहीं कर सकते, वहाँ पे कुछ रीजन को नहीं पड़ा।
So a patient comes with floaters and photopsy. You have to see whether there is a PVD or not. तो अगर तो वो रिंग हो वाइस रिंग, फिर तो हमें एकदम से पता चल जाता है। तो अगर वाइस रिंग ना हो तो फिर भी PVD आराम से नजर आ जाती
आईज कांट सी द थिंग, माइंड नजर
है। हाँ, वो गौर ही नहीं करते हैं।
आप अगर आप पीवीडी को देखने के जो है वो आपको पीवीडी कैसे देखते हैं वैसे? आप तो पीवीडी देख रहे हो ना, बलिंग तो आप पेशेंट को बता दूंगा इसको पीवीडी होनी है, इसको अब उसके सिम्टम आई हैं फ्लैशेज ऑफ फोटोज के साथ या नहीं भी आई। आपको पता है यंग पेशेंट्स के अंदर कैटरेक्ट सर्जरी, यंग पेशेंट्स के अंदर क्लियर लेंस एक्सट्रैक्शन करना विदाउट हैविंग एविडेंस ऑफ, आपने उस पर मेंशन किया या नहीं किया कि मेंशन आपने उसका पीवीडी को मेंशन किया है। अगर आपने नहीं मेंशन किया हुआ और आप यूके में इसकी सर्जरी कर रहे हैं तो आपकी प्रैक्टिस बैन हो सकती है। जिस पेशेंट को पीवीडी नहीं हुई उसको आप क्लियर लेंस एक्सट्रैक्शन को बहुत ही सॉलिड रीजन देनी पड़ेगी, वरना आपको आज इसकी पीवीडी हुई है आप उसे कर दें कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं। तो लिहाजा आप अपने पेशेंट को देखना चाहते हैं इसको पीवीडी है या नहीं है, तो आप कैसे उसको एग्जामिन करें?
सर तो 90 से देखेंगे, लेकिन अगर वही बात आप 22 अगर नहीं नजर आ रही तो 20 स्कैन भी
क्लिनिक की तरफ जाते हैं, इसका वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, बड़ा अच्छी बात है कि इसने यस कंटिन्यू विटनेस से जाए, सीधा उसको स्ट्रेट ना आए, अब ऐसा ऐसा पीछे जाए और फिर वापस आए, 2-3 दफ़ा हाथ प्रेशर को मूव करें, आपको एक क्लियर विटनेस नजर आना शुरू होगा और दूसरा उसमें ये होगा कि कुछ